Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and in today's video we have a new update to the 10.2 PTR. First off, wow, the Battleground Blitz Brawl. They've increased the acquisition rate of resources in Temple of Kot Mogu in the middle of the map, and increased the duration of Shadow Sight from 8 to 12 seconds, so big changes there. We also have a bunch of class changes, a little bit less important than the Temple of Kot Mogu ones. Blood Death Knight, they're changing the 2 set to trigger off of consuming runic power instead of consuming off of Bone Shield charges. I prefer this. This means that when you're tanking in Raid, for instance, you don't necessarily, like, whenever it triggers off of Bone Shield charges, that means that you're not going to be getting benefit when you're not actively tanking the boss, which means there's an incentive to, like, taunt a lot and have the boss for 60, 70% of the time. Instead of just 50% of the time, which starts to be really annoying when there are 2 tanks that have incentives to do that at the same time, which often there are. So whenever they lower this by a little bit, I like it. So I like to see that there. Frost DK. The 4-piece bonus is getting a pretty sizable nerf here. Trigger chance reduced to 30 from 40, and cooldown reduction reduced from 10 to 6. So probably something like a 50% nerf to the total DPS output of this 4 set, right? 25% nerf on the proc rate, and a 40% nerf on the CDR. And then they fixed an issue with Chill Streak not decrementing a bounce when it bounced off the Death Knight, which will also functionally be a nerf compared to the version of the PTR that was up, although, of course, this is, you know, moving it to what it was intended to do, where it doesn't just keep bouncing twice as many times if it's bouncing off of you. Demon Hunter. Developers note, Demon Hunter talent updates will be starting to roll in as they become ready, starting with the Havoc tree changes in this week's PTR build. In some cases, talents may be missing or marked as a work in progress, but there are enough changes to the Havoc tree and individual talents that we'd like to get it in players' hands to begin gathering feedback. Vengeance and class tree changes are coming soon. Spectral Sight's cooldown is now 90 seconds. Which is important because it's now the way that you reveal a Fodder to the Flame demon, which will now also instantly die to I-Beam or Feldev. And Fodder to the Flame buff is now granted when you kill the demon instead of collecting its soul. So they're moving Fodder to the Flame from being a proc to being something that you trigger yourself. Although you do have to press Spectral Sight to do that, which, you know, is, I guess Demon Hunters have enough space for a couple extra keybinds. It'll be okay if you didn't already have that on a good keybind. Meta cooldown reduced to 3 minutes was 4 minutes. That's a big change. This is something that's kind of, meta has moved around its identity of how long of a cooldown and how impactful of a cooldown it's been over time. So it'll be interesting to see where they land on that this time. But moving it down to 3 from 4. There aren't very many 4-minute classes left in the game. Most classes are now either 2 or 3. So that does sort of move DH more into that standard, you know, homogenous 3-minute cooldown class. It'll be, yeah, again, interesting to see just how much of a damage increase meta will end up being in this version of DH. Darkness now has a 15% chance to avoid all damage from an attack. The chance to avoid is increased by 100% when not in a raid, so 30% in a Mythic Plus situation. I think this is really cool. So Darkness has always been a button that has felt much less useful in an M Plus situation, but it has been super valuable in raid because it's just, you know, rolling that many damage instances on that many people. It's going to even out and it's going to provide a lot of value. Whereas in an M Plus situation, aside from using, like, you use it against like bursting stacks, but that's never been the best way to handle bursting stacks, and it's never been reliable anyways. So you would kind of just use it randomly at M Plus and try and get something out of it. But increasing this chance to avoid in an M Plus situation up to 30%, that's a large chance to avoid damage. I think that's something where putting this on a tank as well, using this as like a tank defensive, is going to be a large play in Mythic Plus, because that's huge. That's basically an external now. First, the Illidari has been removed. Don't remember what that did. I guess I can maybe right-click it and then search Google for it, and then click on the Wowhead link. Metamorphosis granting versatility and cooldown reduction. Okay, yeah, because they baked in the cooldown reduction. That makes sense. I believe this was a talent against Demonic, and so you didn't pick it anyways because you just take Demonic instead, but I'm not 100% sure. I could be making things up. Havoc. Meta duration reduced to 20 seconds was 24, so again, shorter cooldown, less duration. Demonic Appetite is now baseline and causes souls to generate 20 was 30 Fury. Fell Eruption is now baseline. Ooh, baseline stun for Havoc and M+. That's Fell Eruption was something that often in a lot of different seasons in the game's past has been awkward to actually acquire, but it's powerful. It's a powerful stun. Glaive Tempest. Cooldown increased to 25. Damage increased, and damage reduced beyond 8 targets was 5. Okay, so this button is getting better to press, but you're going to be able to press it a little bit less often. Fell Barrage redesigned. No longer channeled. Drains 15 Fury per tick. Lasts until Fury is depleted. Damage reduced beyond 5 targets was 8. Huh. So you're going to just press Fell Barrage, and it's going to drain your Fury while it's going, but it's not going to be a channeled spell, so you can keep pressing other stuff during it, and it's going to just shoot out Barrage's Fell. So maybe this is going to be sort of like a Breath of Sindragosa playstyle with Fell Barrage, where you're going to press it at high Fury and then try and generate enough Fury to keep it going. That sounds kind of cool. Initiative's effect is no longer triggered or denied by damage over time effects. So you're neither going to proc the good part of initiative, nor lose the ability to proc initiative based on either your or enemy's damage over time effects, respectively. That makes sense, making it only off of direct attacks. That seems good. Hopefully, a lot of like raid, environmental damage, tick type events are correctly flagged as damage over time for the purposes of this. Momentum now increases damage by 6%, down from 8. Lasts 6 seconds, up from 5. And duration stacks to a maximum of 30 seconds was 10. Okay, so they're really moving momentum into this space of like you're going to get more duration of it per button press, and you'll be able to stack that duration all the way up to 30. So it's going to be pretty hard to screw up momentum. The main way that you'll screw up momentum is just by not pressing, Fell Rush and letting it sit on 2 charges. And just letting momentum value disappear from that, but even that's not going to be the end of the world. This will be a lot. This will be a even less punishing version of momentum than the one that used to exist, than the older one, I think. Inertia. When empowered by Unbound Chaos, Fell Rush increases damage by 20% for 5 seconds. Interesting. Okay, so they're changing Inertia to kind of give you a more focused momentum window, sort of a bit more of an old momentum playstyle, not on all of your momentum abilities, but just on your Unbound Chaos Fell Rushes. Fell Rush now has a longer global cooldown. It's now on a 0.5 second GCD from 0.25, and Fell Blade now has a much shorter global cooldown of 0.5, down from 1.5. Okay, interesting. New talent. Ooh, interesting. Deflecting Dance. Blade Dance deflects incoming attacks, absorbing damage up to 15% of your max HP. So Blade Dance, you used to be able to press it and dodge for 1 second. You had 100% dodge while it was going off, which was actually really big in M+. That was a huge thing that Havoc did in like BFA M+, was you could like soak charges that bosses did. Smash Bite the Hateful that's coming in Black Cold. That would be an example of a boss against which Blade Dance dodge was huge. This does not return that functionality really, but it does create a little bit of an opportunity to press Blade Dance as a bit of a defensive in the same sort of way of like pressing Fade for a priest on certain abilities. That'll be something where I suspect this will be something that the best DHs in the world do get some value out of this in very high levels of progression in both Raid and Mythic Plus. New talent, A Fire Inside. Immo Aura has 1 additional charge, has a 30% chance to refund a charge when activated. You can have multiple Immolation Auras active at a time. That seems very good and very cool. That seems powerful as well. That seems like a definitely something to use, especially if you're going to be getting the Fury off of multiple of them, as well as a lot of damage out of them. I mean, that seems big. That seems like you could kind of just chain. Imagine if you're just chaining off, Immo Aura Fell Rush, Immo Aura Fell Rush, Immo Aura Fell Rush. I wonder how this will stack and stuff in that case. That's yeah, that seems potentially big, especially because you get extra Fell Rushes when your Evoker presses Time Spiral. That could be a really big high roll if you get a couple of these refund procs. Fellfire Heart talent has been removed. Fell Rush damage has been increased by 60%. Unbound Chaos is now 1 point for slightly more value than 1 point of the old talent, but obviously much less total value. Critical Chaos is now a 1 point talent and is now basically giving you 30% crit chance instead of 40% for 2 points, so a bit more efficient, but obviously less high end. Dancing with Fate is now 1 point and is again 25% instead of 40% for 2 points. Blind Fury, 1 point, grants 40 Fury per second, so that's the same as 2 points used to be, but has 10% increased damage and duration, which is the same as 1 point used to be. Serrated Glaives is now 1 point, has been adjusted. Enemies hit by Chaos Strike or Throw Glaive, used to be only Throw Glaive, take 15%, was 20% for 2 points. Increased damage from Chaos Strike and Throw Glaive was Chaos Strike and Eye Beam. Okay, so Serrated Glaives is now just interesting. I like what they're doing here as well with making all these 2-pointers 1-pointer. That's going to add a bunch of extra points to the tree. These were a lot of your best talent points, though. So it actually is going to be... This does also come with a bit of a throughput nerf. By default, like this change is going to be, I believe, a throughput nerf change, because even though this 1 point is more efficient than the 2 used to be, you're still losing the ability to take 2 points in this, right? And now you're only going to take 1 point, even though it's a better point. I suspect that this gives them a little bit of space to put some power into other parts of the kit, which obviously they are doing as well. I guess, in fact, when you factor in the Fell Rush baseline damage going up and then Unbound Chaos, you're probably going to just do more damage overall with it. Again, our assumption should be, at this point, whenever they rework a spec, it is going to be extremely good when it comes out. At this point in the game... In Dragonflight, they've reworked like 8 specs, and 7 of them have been fantastic, and 1 of them has been pretty good. So the default assumption here should be that Havoc and Vengeance will probably both be great coming out of this patch. I'm not necessarily a fan of always just having all of the reworks be tuned that highly. I think it'd be a little bit better if they were a little bit less. Especially, you can see the effects that the Guardian, although the Guardian wasn't even a big rework, but the Mage and Paladin reworks had on the Mythic Plus meta this time around, where it's like, it's great if you're one of those mains, but then if you're playing something else, you're just like, hang on, my talent tree was designed 9 months ago and is, I guess, really obsolete now. Anyways, Growing Inferno now 1 point was 2, and it is giving the same value that it used to give it 2. Isolated Prey has been adjusted, no longer causes Fell Rush to grant Fury, now causes Immo Aura to deal increased damage. Ooh, that's going to be really big especially with the Immo Aura fire inside stuff, if you can take that as well and have that on single target. That could be big. Vengeance, changed to 2 set here to reduce the chance to trigger for each target beyond the first. This makes sense. I saw Vengeance and M+ was really going off. Even though they haven't had their tree redesign, and they haven't had these sigil build sort of support added to the tree, which we know is coming. Even with just a set bonus, they were kind of going off. So I'm not surprised to see that chance getting reduced for each target beyond the first. Guardian. Developer's note. Guardian Druid's rage generation scales exceptionally well with large numbers of targets, often resulting in resource saturation. This adjustment to Blood Frenzy is meant to tone down rage income in scenarios with large target counts. Thrash's rage generation for Blood Frenzy now has a target cap, was previously uncapped. You can go look at my videos for the 3 rounds of nerfs that they did to Guardian, and you can see me saying this is the change they need to make to nerf Guardian appropriately. So this is a good change. This spec needed this. This is not... Blood Frenzy, big AoE situations, just having a infinitely full Fury bar, 12 stacks of Iron Fur on you, still pressing raise every global was not good. So capping this is good. Glad they've finally done this. We have a 2 set here for Amir Drasil's set bonus. 2 set change here. Dream Thorns is now being buffed by the percentage of damage to 25 from 10, and the duration is increased to 45. Now, if you go watch my video where I reacted to the set bonuses for the first time, I initially was like, oh, Guardian one looks really good. I bet that one's going to need to get nerfed. So just goes to show, sometimes I read things and I'm wrong about them by quite a bit as well, because this one ended up needing to get buffed instead. I still think that it's a set bonus with a powerful effect in terms of qualitatively, right? The way the effect works, it seems powerful to me. But yeah, it turns out the number tuning on it was low, even though to me it read as high. So, complicated game and or me stupid. A little bit of both, perhaps. Resto Druid. Cenarius' guidance no longer spawns an additional Grove Guardian at the beginning of Incarn. It now reduces the cooldown of Incarn by 5 seconds when a Grove Guardian fades, and Grove Guardians are now present on the totem bar. All right, here's a big one. Evoker Augmentation. Developers note. Augmentation's contributions to the party, particularly in Mythic Plus, are too impactful and are making it difficult for other compositions to shine. As a result, we're doing some targeted nerfs to their group utility by reducing the value of Aspect's Favor, Molten Blood, and Ebonmite. Aspect's Favor is now a 4%, down from 6% maximum health increase. Molten Blood has been nerfed by 50%, and Ebonmite has been nerfed by 20%, going to 8% of the Evoker's primary stat from 10%. Slightly smaller nerf, actually, while they have the current set bonus, but it'll be bigger again going into next year because the current set bonus augments the Ebonmite total size of the value. So augmentation is a tricky topic because at the very highest levels of gameplay, both in Mythic Plus and Raid, it is extremely good, even after the couple nerfs that it took after coming out. But in mid to low end gameplay, if you're playing with people that you don't, have their that aren't, synchronizing their cooldowns, that aren't reliably pressing their cooldowns, that aren't pressing their globals in a way that you can predict as the Augmentation Evoker, or if you're playing with Augmentation Evoker that doesn't know how the cooldowns function of a different spec, if there's, as you start losing that level of optimization and min-max, Augmentation is multiplying, right? It multiplies its damage with the target. And so if you start reducing those, you really quickly start reducing the output of Augmentation, which means that nerfs like this will help make it less mandatory to play one of them in every Mythic Plus group and 4 of them in every Raid group, which I believe without these nerfs would have been true next patch. With these nerfs, it may still be true next patch is the problem. I'll have to, see how this actually turns out on the numbers side of things, but again, the way that it functions, that multiplicative nature of it, this is a similar reason where Power Infusion also just shines so much in that really highest level of gameplay. And it's tough because if you keep nerfing it so that it doesn't behave problematically in the highest level of gameplay, it's going to suck in an average pug, because if they have to nerf you so that you don't do top damage when you're buffing 2 people synchronizing their cooldowns and pressing all their buttons right, like how are you going to do any damage when you're in a pug with 1 person who's pressing their cooldowns that you're synchronizing yours with, and they're kind of screwing up half their globals in that range, right? Like it's a tough problem to solve. I don't envy Blizzard trying to solve this. I'm a little surprised that they didn't, when they say particularly in Mythic Plus here, I'm a little surprised they didn't just target the Mythic Plus aura, the closest clutchmates aura again, because I think that anytime they think that it's doing particularly well in M Plus compared to Raid, that aura I think is a good thing to target. But yeah, more augmentation nerfs. I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't enough to make the high end more balanced, but that's what's happening here to this spec. Preservation. Looks like they've reverted this Spirit Bloom healing. They briefly increased the Spirit Bloom healing, and then they were like, oopsie. And so I guess that has already been changed, been reverted. And Rewind has been nerfed to a 33% damage taken in the last 5 seconds, was 40%. Probably still very good. Rewind is one of those buttons where you just press it and your whole raid is safe, even when they previously were dying. So especially if they want to try and move the raid cooldowns to being a little bit less, feast and famine, Rewind definitely one of the ones that needed to be targeted in that world. Mage. Okay, we have some set bonus changes. Arcane 2 set, they've buffed the duration to 20 from 15, and the 4 set now requires half as many clear casting stacks to work, and it makes Arcane missiles deal 150% increased damage to primary target and 100% to secondary targets. Okay. And they've also fixed an issue with the missile volley reach extending further than intended. Far further than intended, even. Fire Mage. 2 set, now buffed to a 4% instead of 3% crit damage increase per stack. And the 4 set now has been buffed to 150%, was 100%. Developers note, we're aware of an issue with the following crit damage bonuses not attributing the correct amount of damage to ignite when an ability critically strikes. Overflowing Energy, Wildfire, and Searing Rage. This issue will be resolved in the next week's build. Monk. Jade Serpent Soothing Mist healing increased by 40%. Mistweaver. 2-set bonus. Chi Harmony now stores 20% of all healing, was 15. Healing Elixir has been redesigned as a passive. It procs now when you drop below 35% health and are not in the loss of control effect. Instantly healing you for 15%. You generate 1 elixir every 30 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. So they're taking away the ability to press this yourself and just making it a proc. And Unison's range increased to 40 yards, was 15. Windwalker. Wow. This is more patch notes for Windwalker than I've seen in years. Developers note, we are continuing to monitor the set bonus and feedback around it. As the auto attack trigger was not accomplishing the intended goal of providing Windfoot, that thing has been renamed between Eventoes, Blackout Fortification, and now I guess it's gonna be Windfoot perhaps now. Windfoot, only during lulls and quiet points in the rotation, we've updated the bonus trigger off all melee ability damage and normalized trigger frequency. Yeah, the auto attack trigger is a very annoying and very commonly used trigger that they use for Windwalker. The problem with the auto attack trigger is that many different things in the Windwalker's kit will either prevent you from auto attacking or reset your swing timer. And that makes set bonuses that key off of your auto attack timer feel really bad because, like, am I supposed to just wait an extra 0.2 seconds and get my auto before I press my global so that I don't potentially munch one of my procs? Or am I just supposed to accept that this thing, my set bonus just doesn't function for these 20 seconds because I'm in my cooldowns or whatever? I guess that was their intended goal, to provide Windfoot only during lulls, which I guess at least this means, when I initially read the set bonus, I thought that the initial goal was for it to proc normally, and they kind of just didn't understand that the way that the swing timer worked, that wouldn't happen. Now I can see that actually it was their intended goal. My belief is that this is a bad intended goal for them to have, because a set bonus like that you're just aware that the way that you're supposed to play your rotation normally is preventing it from triggering, is bad. I don't think that's a fun way to play most specs, and especially I don't think it's a fun way to play Windwalker, especially after they've had set bonuses that have done that already several times over the past couple of years. So I'm glad they're changing it. I think that it was a misguided goal from the beginning, but you know, that happens with set bonuses, right? 40 specs in the game. A couple of them are going to be stinky at the start every PTR cycle. Unfortunate that it always happens to Windwalker, but is what it is. 2-set bonus. Blackout kick damage increase is now 150%, was 100%. And 4-set bonus. Cooldown reduction increased to 2 seconds, was 1 second. So buffs to both. And then I guess now it's going to trigger off of melee damage as well. Yeah, I guess that's further down here. So fixed some bugs with not having it be consumed and causing it to be consumed when Dantachi empowers. Fixed an issue that prevented Dantachi from granting Blackout Reinforcement. Oh, so maybe these were actually 2 different buttons, or 2 different things. Ebentoes, Windfoot, Blackout Reinforcement. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, because maybe this is just a different effect than that. These changes were applied to the PTR environment late last week. Yeah, and there were changes. I did remember seeing these coming in last week. 2-set bonus to the... So this is the 2-set. Windfoot now triggers off melee abilities in addition to auto attacks, and has been shifted to a normalized proc model, which means that you're not going to lose value if you miss some of your autos in a given minute window, which is nice. That's really nice. And then they've updated the tooltip as well. Paladin, holy. All healing reduced by 5%, was 3%. So another small healing nerf here. Hand of Divinity now increases the healing of Holy Light by 40%, was 80%. Saved by the Light's Absorb Shield has been increased. Okay, I like that. Saved by the Light was nice. Like this, buffing the kind of spot healing, life-saving side of all healers, but even Holy Paladin as well, I think is good. And then cutting down on the raid healing and the ability to top the whole raid in one global is good as well. Blessed Focus now increases Glimmer by 40%, was 25. Merciful Aura is now increased by 20%, was 50, while Aura Mastery is active. Again, that's raid healing, but they've buffed Merciful Aura outside of AM. Touch of Light, now increased by 500%, was 700%. Word of Glory increased by 10%. Barrier of Faith reduced to 25% instead of 50%. Aura Mastery now increases the effectiveness of Devo Aura to 12%, was 15%. Okay, so a slight nerf to the Aura Mastery on Devo Aura. This sort of change is the one that, if this sort of thing starts happening a little bit more, this is the kind of thing that will take Holy Paladin away from being like a guaranteed one of your two Paladins to being maybe one of your two Paladins, which is, that's probably good. Holy Paladin has been a mandatory raid spot for a while now, and I'm not a fan of mandatory raid spots in theory, although it is nasty when there are 30 specs that have mandatory raid spots or whatever, or 20 specs or 15 specs that have mandatory raid spots now. It's tough then telling the other specs like, oh no, you can't have this. But I guess I'm thinking more about the mandatory classes, right, that are in a mandatory class. Protection 2 set now grants damage reduction instead of armor. Okay, so it's going to function against magical damage. Maximum stacks have been reduced to 5 as well, each granting 2% DR, so it's effectively going to stack up twice as fast. This is a buff to an anemic set bonus that I think will still feel quite bad because it is still centered around this this consecration-y thing, which prop paladins are rarely in danger in fights where you're really in a good spot to always stand in your consecration anyways, and the 2 set sort of leans further into that. I don't know. I mean, I think that this is probably moving it in a good direction. Maybe the damage reduction number even needs to go up to like 3 or something for this to be a compelling set bonus as well. I think what would be cool is if they made a set bonus where your consecration kind of moved towards you. Although I guess maybe in some situations that would be bad if you had it in a good spot. But imagine one where it sort of like slowly crept towards you on the ground until it was centered under you. I think that could be a nice little quality of life one, or even a talent or something. Ret. Developers note, due to previous bugs with targeting issues on Wrathful Sanction, the ability was a bit undertuned. Following the bug fixes, we're retuning the set bonus to better hit our targets. Additionally, with the amount of uptime the 4 set provides, it was overperforming in tandem with a few of the talents located deeper in the tree. We appreciate everyone's feedback and playtesting, and we'll keep making adjustments to the set power as necessary over the course of PTR. 2 set has been nerfed to 30% expedition damage increase. And Wrathful Sanction now deals 50% to 4 nearby enemies, was 20%, so a buff to that part. And the 4 set is now a 25% echo instead of a 50% echo. Red Paladin was doing a lot of damage before, and yeah, this I think is I wouldn't be panicking if I was a Red Pally without these nerfs. I think the spec is still looking like it's going to be a good one next patch. Priest. Powered Life now costs 2.5% mana, was 0.5%. Cooldown has been decreased, but its cooldown is no longer decreased when cast on low health targets. It's now only usable on low health targets. Its healing has been increased and by default, and it no longer increases its healing on targets below 35% health, which makes sense because it now can only target those people. Interesting. Kind of weird. Anytime they have abilities that can only work on things below certain amounts of health, at least Touch of Death is really annoying in this way on Monk, where it's like you're pressing the button, you look at the mob's health bar, it's in Touch of Death range, and then like 3 seconds later, the button finally lights up. Hopefully Powered Life doesn't work that way and is actually responsive and correctly can be clicked on somebody's frame the millisecond they actually drop below 35% health and then works. But yeah, that's, I think, provided that it functions in the code, I think this is a better way for this spell to be designed. Disc Priest. Developers note, we've heard feedback that Shadow Covenant and the talent tree in general would be more flexible and interesting if Shadow Fiend were a more viable option. So Shadow Covenant now grants a higher damage increase with Shadow Fiend. We've also tied in the duration with the duration of Shadow Fiend or Mindbender to make using Inescapable Torment more enjoyable. Finally, we've reduced the overall value of Shadow Covenant and distributed some of the power into Penance to nudge Discipline a bit closer towards consistent damage instead of heavy burst windows. Ultimate Penance now takes into account your primary target and will prioritize healing bolts if an ally is selected, or damaging bolts if an enemy is selected. Damage and healing increased by 25%, and an initial tick has been added to the start of the channel. Okay, so they're really leaning into this being a lot of power in this cooldown. Embrace Shadow has been removed, Twilight Corruption remains in its location, and continues to increase Shadow Covenant's effectiveness by an additional 10%. Shadow Covenant is now 12 seconds with Mindbender. Shadow Covenant now grants 10% to Mindbender or 25% to Shadow Fiend. Used to be 25% with either one. So now they made the duration longer for a shallower effect with Mindbender to match the duration. Shadow Covenant's visuals have been improved. Penance damage and healing has been increased by 15%. That's a lot. Mindbender and Void Summoner have swapped positions. Void Summoner now reduces the cooldown of Shadow Fiend by 4 seconds or Mindbender by 2. So again, some buffs here to just the Shadow Fiend non-Mindbender option. Fixed an issue causing Mindbender to sometimes return to your side immediately upon being summoned. Expiation, new vocabulary word for me actually. Let's look this one up. The act of making amends or reparation for guilt or wrongdoing. Atonement. Okay, atonement, redemption, reparation, restitution. I see. Now increases Mind Blast and Shadow Word Death damage by 15% or 30%. Used to be 10 or 20%. Okay. Wheel and Woe now increases Smite's damage by 20% per stack and Power Word Shield by 10% per stack. Was 5. So buffs coming in quite a lot. This seems like a pretty good set of buffs to Disc. I mean, this as well is nice. And again, remember that Disc now has more effective atonement in 5-player content. I'm predicting it right now. I think next season M+ is going to be a Disc Priest meta. Holy Priest. Developer's note: with the flash heal and heal buffs, Trail of Light was overperforming, so we're reducing its value to match its previous power level. We're also increasing the value of Pontifex since it was an unpopular talent. Finally, we're making Echo of Light's period faster, so it is more responsive to damage. I love this line here. We're increasing the value of this talent since it was unpopular. I wish they would do this for a lot more talents. Like, look at them. Obviously, there's some talents that are just good but unpopular, but there's a lot of talents that are just sitting there, not being used, not good, not fitting into any builds, and I think buffing those for a lot of specs is a really good thing to do more frequently. Prayer of Mending healing decreased by 5%. Prismatic Echoes now gives less healing to Echo of Light. Echo of Light's healing has been decreased. Divine Images, Dazzling Light, and Blessed Light healing have both been decreased. Trail of Light is now replicating less value as well, but Pontifex is now doing double increase there, double value. And Echo of Light now heals every 2 seconds and lasts 4, was every 3 and lasts 6. So it's same healing over a shorter time, heals faster. Rogue. We're expecting to see some nerfs here. This class, especially Outlaw, was massively overperforming in the last week's build. So let's see what happens here. Airborne Irritant has been moved to the class tree. It was an Outlaw. And it has been adjusted. Blind has less cooldown, less duration, and applies to all enemies near the target. Marked for Death has been removed. Assassination. They've buffed the damage of the 4 set by 230%. Caustic Splatter's damage has been increased as well. So definitely moving towards a Caustic Splatter plus 4-piece, envenom a target, splash that damage build for Assassination. Which that build already was, I think, the best way to play Assassination in the last week's build, but it was certainly underperforming compared to Outlaw. Dashing Scoundrel is now a 1-point talent. Indiscriminate Carnage duration is now 10 seconds, was 3. Scent of Blood now increases agility by 4% per target, up to a maximum of 20%. That's for 2 points in there. Previously, this was 3% to a maximum of 24. So in theory, if you had 8 Ruptures out, which you could, but you often didn't, and that would require a really large pull, this is actually a nerf to the top end. But in like a 5-target situation, this is just a straight up buff. And obviously it's even better buff on smaller target counts. Actually, I guess it's equal. As long as the target count is 5 or less, it's the same size buff, huh? Outlaw. Grand Melee has been redesigned. Now increases damage by 5%, and Blade Flurry deals 10% additional damage to nearby targets. So this used to be Blade Flurry deals increased damage, including to the primary target. Now it's just a damage buff, and crucially, this means you don't have to press Blade Flurry on a single target. You can just press Blade Flurry if it's an AoE situation, but you don't have to, in order to get the value out of Ground Melee, you don't have to press in a single target. Not like you necessarily did that before, but this makes the buff, I think this makes the buff better. Like, this is better in terms of the design. Design is better. Now, obviously, Outlaw, I do think needed damage numbers going down. Dreadblades has been removed, and Crackshot damage with Dispatch has been reduced to 75% of normal damage, was 100%. I suspect that this is still going to need to see some number go down over the next couple of weeks of PTR builds, but I like this is a nice quality of life, better version of this buff, I believe. Subtlety, Stiletto Staccato, and Stunning Secret have been removed. Gormaw's Bite cooldown has been reduced to 45 seconds, was a minute. And Secret Technique's damage has been increased by 12%. All right, so some buffs to sub coming in. Shaman, Elisham. 4-piece has been redesigned. When consuming Primordial Wave and for 10 seconds afterwards, Lava Burst burns your target for 25% additional damage over 4 seconds, and for 10 seconds after each cast of Chain Lightning causes your next Lava Burst to hit up to 3 additional targets affected by your Flame Shock for 100% of normal damage. Okay, so these are both... The wording here is a little bit difficult to parse, but I assume what this means is that for 10 seconds after Primordial Wave, both of these things are true. I assume that's what the second for 10 seconds means, is still referring to Primordial Wave. So the playstyle is going to be you Primordial Wave, shoot out a bunch of Lava Bursts, get a bunch of burns on your targets, and then you go, what, like Chain Lightning, Lava Burst, Chain Lightning, Lava Burst, Chain Lightning, Lava Burst, and it's hitting all the additional targets. That seems very cool. I hope it's good, but it seems cool. Resto Shaman. Developer's note. With Riptide, Healing Surge, and Healing Wave doing a lot more healing, Ancestral Awakening's power was increased beyond intended levels. Awakening is now being reduced by 50% in terms of how much healing it is going to do. It now prefers to heal injured players instead of always healing the lowest health player, so they're reducing the smartness of the healing of this, so that it won't just always target the very lowest health player. 2-set has been adjusted. Tidal Reservoir has been nerfed to 15% of Riptide's healing, was 20%, and now lasts for 15 seconds, was 10 seconds. Okay. This makes sense as well. You know, if they increase the base value of Riptide, it makes sense to nerf the things that scale for a percentage of Riptide's healing, right? Which they did end up increasing Riptide's healing. I don't think it was in the patch notes last week. It was like in a note afterwards. That did come in, though, which is good. I was hoping to see that. 4-set for Amirdrasil has been adjusted as well. Chance to create a new Riptide has been reduced to 5%, was 10%. That's a large nerf to that Riptide proliferation. But again, I still think Resto Shaman is looking like it was in a pretty good spot, and I suspect that it still will be here, even with these kind of nerfs to the amount of raid healing that is provided from the Riptides. Warlock, Aflock, 4-set has been redesigned. Soul Rock grants 3 Umbra Fire Kindling, which increase the damage of your next Malefic Raptor by 50%, or your next Seed by 60%. Additionally, Umbra Fire Kindling causes Rapture to extend the duration of your damage over time effects and Haunt by 2 seconds. A little bit reminiscent of the Sepulcher set bonus, the Sepulcher 4-piece for AF. Yeah, interesting thing to key off here is the Soul Rot. So effectively, every Soul Rot, you're going to get 150% of a Malefic Raptor, right? And also you're going to get 6 seconds of dots. That still seems a little bit weak to me, but I'm not a Warlock scientist. I could be wrong. Demo Lock. All right, lots of notes here for Demo Lock. Demo Lock was sort of gutted in the initial incarnation of this patch, so I think it's good news that there are big changes coming here to hopefully bring it back to being a spec. All Nether Portal Demons damage has been increased by 30%. Gul'dan's Ambition has been redesigned. When Nether Portal ends, you summon a Pit Lord that blasts your target for fire damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. Now, my understanding is that this Pit Lord is going to be ranged instead of melee now, which one of the people in my guild messaged me in sort of dejected fashion, because one of our signature moves in my guild is whenever our guild master had his Pit Lord, we would rescue it away from the boss, which is now going to reduce its damage by less if it's a ranged ability rather than a melee ability, so that's unfortunate for us. Demon Fire damage has been increased by 30% on Demonic Tyrant. Reign of Tyranny has been redesigned to make Demonic Tyrant empower 5 additional Wild Imps and deal 10% additional for each demon he empowers. Fix an issue where your permanently summoned Felguard would not benefit from Tyrant. 25% or 30% buffs to a bunch of core abilities. Immutable Hatred has been redesigned. Your primary Felguard's Legion Strike deals 100% increased damage to primary target, and it deals physical damage after auto-attacking the same enemy 3 consecutive times. 2-set's been redesigned. Demon Bolt now applies a Doom Brand that explodes after 20 seconds, dealing shadow damage to nearby enemies. and Hand of Gul'dan reduces the duration of your active Doom brands by 1 second per soul shard spent. So maybe there's a little bit of a putting out multiple Doom brands playstyle that they're trying to put in here. They've also increased the damage by 35%. The chance for it to summon a Doom Fiend has also been increased, which is the 4 set, which is, when Doom Brand explodes, you have a chance to summon a Doom Fiend that casts 5 Doom Bolt volleys before departing. Each Doom Bolt volley deals shadow damage to up to 4 nearby enemies. So they're really trying to make this have a multi-target spin on it rather than just being a pure single target effect, which I applaud. Demo has often already suffered from feeling very locked in to only being a single target spec, unless like Implosion was good. And this, I think, is a good way to try and design some sets that will have more utility in an AoE situation. I don't have any takes on if the numbers are good yet or if the playstyle is going to be fun yet. I that's something you're going to have to ask some Warlock players, not me. I know that they were mostly, dooming over Demonology going into this. I wonder if this will be enough to make them feel a little bit better about it. And the thing is, it's playstyle and numbers, and the playstyle changes are ones that a lot of the high-end demo locks that I know weren't excited about, and I don't think this will be enough to make the playstyle back to what it used to be, but maybe it'll be fun in a new way. Destro Lock. Rain of Fire damage increased by 15%. 2 sets been redesigned. Bolts from Dimensional Rifts now deal 25% of damage to nearby enemies, and Immolate periodic damage has a chance to grant a charge of Dimensional Rift, so again, getting some AoE value here. 4 sets been redesigned. Dimensional Rift can now summon a powerful Flame Rift, which blasts 20 Searing Bolts that deal fire damage and an additional fire damage over 10 seconds. They're really copying the homework from the Legion Artifact traits, I believe, here, that you could get. Warrior. Rallying Cry has been nerfed to 10%, was 15% health, and Inspiring Presence has been removed. Okay, this is good. Rally was really, really good in M+. I think maybe it would be a good candidate to think about giving Rally the same text they've given Darkness, where it gets more value in M+, because I feel like this is a nerf that's aimed at Raid, but in M+, I think Rally doesn't need to be super duper weak. But in Raid, it definitely, nerfing this a little bit is gonna, I think is gonna be a good thing. But yeah, I'd love to see a 50% or 100% increased effectiveness of this in an M+ situation. Arms. Slam damage increased by 25%. Improved Slam's critical strike damage increase has been nerfed to 10%, was 30%. Protection. 2 sets been slightly redesigned. Consuming Bleeds now grants a damage taken to the warrior instead of applying a damage dealt reduction to the target. Now consumes 40% of the remaining bleed damage when casting Shield Slam. Okay, so warriors were doing a lot of damage with this set bonus. I tested as warrior, and there's some pulls. There's a lot of damage is coming from this this effect. Not surprised to see it being nerfed in terms of how much damage it's going to provide. Does this mean that the bleed is still going to stay and just have 40% of its duration taken away? Or is the bleed going to disappear and you're only going to consume and get the value for 40% of it? I hope it's the former, because it would really suck if there was an incentive to not press this to, not lose damage in some situations, like when you have your Thunderous Roar out and stuff. I like that it's going to put a damage reduction on the warrior instead of a damage reduction to the target. That's a nice way to make this have, again, a little bit more utility in a AoE situation without hurting the single target nature of it. And then the 4 set says Thunderous Roar's cooldown reduction has been increased to 3 seconds, was 1 second. Wow, okay, so that's going to be, this might offset even, actually, it's not going to offset the damage of this, I don't think, but it's definitely a nice change here to this 4-piece. Items. Equipment that drops in the following activities have had their item levels increased. Dragonbane Keep, World Quest, Centaur Hunts, Feroc Assaults, Researchers Under Fire, Time Rifts, Dream Surge. Repeatable activities will reward Season 3 Explorer gear, and weekly activities will reward Season 3 Adventurer gear. So this is just the standard item level bump for these things, and it's going to be that same 39 item level bump that is happening for Raid and M+ as well, it looks like. Dilated Time Capsules have been discontinued and can be sold to vendors for gold. The new weekly currency is Dilated Time Pod. I don't know why this... Oh, it's because you can use this to buy the gear. I think it's adventurer gear you can buy with these. So yeah, it makes sense to not let you buy Season 3 adventure gear with, Time Rift's currency that you can farm before the patch. Dream Surge Chrysalis, which is the Dream Surge weekly currency, has been discontinued and can be sold to vendors for gold. The new weekly currency is Dream Surge Cocoon. So again, same thing, right? Same deal. We just don't want you to farm up Dream Surges and Time Rifts now and then get starter gear with them next patch. Instead, if you want to get that starter gear, you'll have to actually play that content in the next patch. PvP. Don't usually read the PvP changes, although it's interesting to note they're changing the map pools here to all 3 of the arena pools up to 10 from 8, with the goal of increasing map diversity slightly each week to week. Interesting change. It was kind of interesting that the M plus pool and the arena map pool were both at 8. I wonder if this means they maybe be thinking about doing this for M plus as well. And then finally, user interface and accessibility. Ping system. You can now right-click a ping chat message to report spam. It's over for me. I am... oh, this is bad. This is very bad for me. I'm going to be getting chat restricted or ping restricted for sure. Trading post. You can now click the frozen item slot to select and purchase it instead of having to locate it in the list. Nice quality of life change. Refund icon's been added to indicate items that are refundable. The micro menu can be resized to be smaller than default. Previously, it could be only made larger. Accessibility options now has a mount section, which includes setting to better control dragon riding using the keyboard. Oh, nice. So you can now get pitch control on your keyboard, set the sensitivity of these and their debouncing behavior when transitioning between dragon riding and grounded. I don't know what this means, but cool. Existing accessibility options have been moved to the mount section. Sweet. I mean, this is great news. Obviously, like, a lot of people use accessibility options for a lot of different reasons, and it's great to see that expanded. And it's also just great to have the optionality to bind those things to your keyboard. And, sometimes even if you're, it's just nice to have those on your, like, I'll probably mess around with key binding these because sometimes you're just sitting back, you're eating some potato chips with one hand. You just want to be able to dragon ride somewhere, and it's like awkward to do it with the mouse and keyboard. Nice to be able to just do it with keyboard, so that'll be cool. And then finally, we have some new class resource bars coming in for Maelstrom, Insanity, Brewmaster Energy, I guess, Balance Druid thingy, Astral Power, and Fury. Wow, big set of changes that came in with these patch notes this week. That is going to be it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I'll have a video coming out tomorrow about any other developments. There's also note about the season mastery, marker mastery thing as well. So yeah, that'll come out tomorrow. Make sure you've subscribed and stuff so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.